Tell me when we're good. We're on? Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening as we talk about our BHBL return to interscholastic athletics. First off, I apologize for the short delay. We had some technical difficulties, but Brandon's been working on those, and we are all set and ready to go here. My name is Joseph Scalise. I'm the Director of Athletics here at BHBL. I'm joined by my administrative assistant, Tricia Chevalier, and she's going to be helping out as well in the chat section. She will be assisting with the questions that are asked, and then I'll be able to hopefully answer those questions a little quicker than I would in, by looking at my computer. So she's here to help out tonight. So what I'm going to do tonight is just go over our overall plan as we look to transition into this athletic season. It's definitely been a difficult past 6 months for a variety of things, and one in particular, athletics. I remember going out on the athletic field, I think on March 12th, talking to the student athletes, talking to the coaches to say that that was our last day of the season. I'm looking forward to the fact that we're able to get back on our fields and get back into playing the different sports that I know our kids love. So I'm going to go through and talk about our plan, and hopefully I'll be able to provide you with the information as we move forward into this fall season. Okay, just a little background information. On August 24th, Governor Cuomo provided his guidance on how we can return to interscholastic athletics. I know that was an exciting day for many coaches and many athletes. Everyone was looking forward to getting back into their sport. The plan outlined that moderate and lower risk sports would be allowed to begin with practices and competitions as of September 21st. Those sports included girls tennis, cross country, boys and girls soccer, field hockey, golf, and swimming and diving. In addition, the governor outlined that the higher risk fall sports of competitive cheer, football, and also boys and girls volleyball would be allowed to start practicing, but they wouldn't be allowed to compete until he provided further guidance down the road. On September 4th, after getting the guidance from the governor, New York State Public High School Athletic Association put a document together which was entitled their Return to Interscholastic Athletics, and that document provided all the information that we were looking for that were specific towards each individual sport returning to action, and also all the protocols that the state was recommending that schools follow. So on September 9th, the state then came out with some additional guidance that the sports of football and boys and girls volleyball and competitive cheer were going to be moved to a fall 2 season. Listing the higher risk sports, concerns of starting those sports up was the driving force, and the decision was made to push those to a fall 2 season. That fall 2 season is kind of in between the winter season and the traditional start of our spring season. And that fall 2 season would start on March 1st and would go probably through April. The end date is technically up to the section, and our section hasn't decided on that actual end date just yet, but March 1st would be the earliest we could start that fall 2 season. So we're looking to continue our fall season in March. So over the past multiple weeks of getting the guidance from the governor and also from the State Department, and also looking through the Department of Health guidance, we have been developing a plan for how we can provide a safe athletic experience for all of our student athletes that participate in our athletic programs, specifically for this fall season. So how does this look for BHBL? Our plan is to offer all of the varsity and JV levels traditionally, the traditional sports that we've offered in fall. Our plan is to offer those sports once again with the governor's approval. The Suburban Scholastic Council unanimously voted to not provide modified or freshman schedules for the fall season only. And as a result of not providing schedules and not having opponents to compete against, we made a decision that we will not have modified or fall sports this fall season. The fall season, as I mentioned, would start on September 21st, and it will go roughly through November 20th. And it will depend on each sport, but that's the last date that we would be competing. Certain sports we run into some concerns with daylight savings, and not having lights on fields. So the schedules will all be finalized by the end of the week, and at that point you'd be able to see when all the athletic contests will be. The New York State Public High School Athletic Association over the summer did make a decision to cancel all of the state championships for the fall season, and then Section 2 over the past couple weeks announced the cancellation of all the fall sectional tournaments. I know canceling the fall sectional tournaments is tough for all of our varsity athletes. I know that's one of our goals we strive to accomplish each year. Unfortunately, the championships are not there, but I think the overall goal of the section was we wanted our student athletes to get back onto the fields, get back into the pool, get back onto the courts, and start competing again, and that's been the primary goal. All right. So, screening. As you've had a chance to see over the past week of school beginning, your son or daughter has had to go through a screening process to get into the building. We're going to have some similar screening protocols that we will use for athletics. So all student athletes will be screened using the Qualtrics survey each day for school. We do have student athletes that are home virtually, and they are currently not into the Qualtrics system. But those individuals that are going to participate in athletics that are virtually are going to be added to the system, so they will be able to be screened using the Qualtrics survey as well. Until we get that added, we're going to use a Google form that will be sent to them on Monday. Student athletes will be temperature checked by coaches each day that they arrive for practice or a game. And it's similar to how student athletes are being checked as they enter school each day. And one of the reasons why we're doing this is because on a given day, when you look at the virtual students and also the students that are in hybrid that are home that day, they didn't get their temperature checked. So we just want to make sure everyone is all set when they arrive for their practice or competition. In addition, all coaches will be screened each day that they have practice or contest, similar to how our teachers are screened each day. If any student athlete has higher than 100-degree temperature when they arrive, and we will take multiple tests just to make sure, they would be sent home and a parent or guardian will be contacted. In addition, we would be contacting our school nurse to make her aware, and then they would be contacting you as well. In addition, with the screening, all the officials for all of our contests will be screened, and also I'll be talking about spectators in a little bit, but spectators will be required to be screened, and they would be required to provide their personal information, name and phone number for contact tracing purposes. So for the athletes, over the summer, the State Education Department put out that any student athlete that had a physical in the 2018-19 school year and also in the 2019 and 20 school year are going to be medically cleared for the fall 2020 as long as they provide the health history update form, which is a white form that we have used for student athletes, and they've handed it into the nurse, and then they've been given that yellow ticket to get their clearance to participate. So any student athlete that's had a physical over the past 2 years does not need an updated physical for this fall season, which means that I would say probably a high percentage, in the high 90s, of student athletes are not going to need to worry about their physical. Any new student to the district has had to provide their physical to the district, so they should be okay. But any new student to athletics that maybe haven't had their physical, they may need to get a new physical. So if you haven't had a physical in the past 2 years, you will need a new physical. So the white form that we used to fill out, the health history update form, it's also called the sports recertification form. After this presentation tonight, you're going to get an email from me and with a Google form of that form. We need you to fill that form out for if you have a child that's participating in the fall season. We need you to fill that form out in order for them to be cleared. Things are a little different this year, as many things are different, and the process is a little bit more cumbersome. So we're asking you to fill out that form, which should only take you a few minutes, to fill out that form by Friday at 3 p.m. And that way it'll give our nurses enough time to go through and ensure that student athletes are cleared for Monday. And also it'll give me an opportunity to share the names with our coaches so that we can ensure that we didn't miss anyone on our signups that we did over the summer. And then the coaches will have the opportunity to provide any of those student athletes that maybe didn't sign up over the summer. They'll be able to provide them with the information on how things are going to start for their first couple days of practice. In addition, we hand out many important pieces of paperwork to our student athletes: code of conduct, concussion management information, academic guidelines. We hand those out to our student athletes usually in a meeting before the season. They bring those home. Well, hopefully they bring those home. And we are going to do that again a little differently this year. You'll also get an email from me with all of those forms that you can review with your child, and also to look over all those different guidelines that we have in place. So that'll be coming probably early next week. Also coming next week, because I didn't want to send out too much tonight, I really want you to focus just on the health history update form. Also next week, we're going to be sending out a medical waiver for athletics. And this is, traditionally we've had a little blue half sheet of paper that our coaches hold on to in case if we ever have a situation come up at a contest and EMT is there and we need to get information on the student athlete. We have these on hand. So what we're going to do this year is, again, we're going to have a Google form that you can fill out, and all that information will be shared with the coaches so they can have on their computer. They can print it out and have it in front of them if indeed they would need that in the future. Okay, mask policy. This has been a big topic of conversation, I can tell you, amongst members of our league. We've had many hours discussing the guidelines that were put in place in regards to wearing masks for athletics. So in a nutshell, all of our athletes are going to be required to wear a mask for practices and competition, unless players are not able to tolerate a face covering. And this does not include swimming. Swimming is the only sport that they do not need to wear a mask. Obviously, they will be in the pool, so you're not going to be able to wear a mask. But when swimmers are on deck, they do need to have their mask on. And what does tolerate mean? And that was a question that many of us had. And as we looked through the guidance and talked to the state and had more discussions as a league, what we decided was being able to tolerate means if you can't tolerate having that mask on during a game, then you need to be subbed out from the coach. You need to be able to go 6 feet from someone and take your mask off. If you're not able to tolerate it because of a medical reason, similar to what we have for students here in school, if they're not able to wear their mask and they have a doctor's note that states that they cannot do that, then a student athlete would not need to wear their mask during competition. That would be the only way that a student athlete would not be wearing their mask if we had doctor approval on that. But overall, all student athletes from each school in the Suburban Council will have masks on during competitions, which means we expect our athletes to have masks on during practices, again, so they get prepared in the same situation as they would in the game, and also to ensure the safety of all the student athletes and coaches. With that said, coaches will be required to wear masks at all times during practice when 6 feet is when they're not able to maintain a distance of 6 feet or more. Again, this goes in line with the entire league on our feelings on how the mask policy should be enforced. Spectators must maintain 6 feet of physical distance between individuals at all times, and spectators also must be wearing masks or face coverings during competition. Officials, in addition, again, it's a common theme, everyone needs to have their face covering on to ensure the safety of all members of the athletic contest. Officials must ensure a distance of 6 feet is maintained unless the safety of the activity requires a shorter distance. Officials will be required, as I mentioned, to wear masks. This is something that is going to be a little different for many individuals as well. This is the first time we're doing this, and to be in line with our reopening plan for our district, and again to ensure the safety of our student athletes for the fall 2020 season. BHBL will not be providing transportation to and from all athletic contests. Parents are allowed to drive their own child after signing a transportation log that would be provided from the coach. So you will be able to drive your child to and from games. Athletes will be allowed to drive to and from events with approval from the district. We are still working out some of the details on that, but we should have that information finalized in plenty of time before our first athletic contest. Parents are encouraged to become approved drivers, and we use this for many sports during the school year and each season. And what this means is if a parent fills out the form to become an approved driver, they would have the ability to drive not only their child, but they can drive additional team members to the game. So that just gives a little bit more flexibility in the ability to drive student athletes to the game, and it'll help out with some parents that maybe aren't able to get to the school in time to be able to drive the student athletes to the contest. Oh, hold on, sorry. Whenever we are going to an away contest, we still require that all athletes to report to the school, and the coach will have a designated area where they're going to report, so that we can make sure that all athletes are screened before we travel to an opposing school. We don't want to get to a school and then do our screening there and find out that an athlete isn't able to be there. So we're going to do all the screening ahead of time to ensure that all of our student athletes are safe to travel. And that's the process that we're using from the league standpoint. I'm going to take a second right here to go through some questions, and then I'll go back to the presentation. So will the turf be open and will the weight room be open before and after school? And can students in remote sessions stay to use the weight room? Our goal right now is to get the fall season off and running. The plan is to open the weight room soon, but we want to get the fall season off the ground on September 21st, and then we'll have more information regarding the weight room and how that will work. In regards to the turf being open, and our plan is next week to start practices, so we will have the turf open. I think it'll be, for the most part, our athletes will be on it for practice, but if our athletes are not on it for practice, then the community members are more than welcome to use the turf. Yes, the late start of football, that is a concern with people. If you're starting a season in March, will that mean that it's going to go into the spring season? And unfortunately, the spring season will be shortened a little bit because of the fact that we are trying to squeeze in a season in between the winter and the start of the spring season. What our plan would be is to start that spring season in April on the start date, and then depending on what happens with the Regents exams, and again, there's still time for things to change. We have the potential to extend the spring season a little bit to try to ensure that we get a good 2 months of participating in the spring sport. But yes, it will impact the spring season a little bit, and we're hoping that overlap isn't much, so that athletes can go into their next season without missing too much into that true spring season. Please clarify, for freshman cross-country runners, will there not be a chance to compete? We will have JV cross-country and varsity cross-country. So any freshmen that are on the team, that they would be running at the JV level, and then also, or they could be running at the varsity level. So there will not be a designated freshman division. The JV team will run first against the other Suburban Council opponent JV team, and then the varsity teams will run. I know traditionally varsity and JV have run together, and then freshmen was separate. Now we're going to separate varsity and JV. Modified in the spring, no decision has been made regarding modified beyond the fall season. We're going to take it one step at a time, and we're going to see what the winter brings and then move forward with the spring. Our plan is to offer all of our modified programs in the winter and spring, but no decision has been made until we have more guidance on those seasons. There will not be a transfer bus from the middle school to the high school. There will be no transportation, as I mentioned, no transportation from middle school or high school, and no transportation from the high school to any of our opponents in the Suburban Council. So there will be no transportation at all for our student athletes. I'm going to get into the modified in a little bit, or the middle school student athletes. But next question is cross country is no contact distance sport. Yeah, I understand some people are concerned why would cross country be required to wear a mask. Again, at this moment, that's a decision we have made as a league. You know, and more information, you know, as things have changed, you know, if anything does change in regard to cross country, I'd be sure to provide that information to our coaches who would provide it to our athletes. Are all high schools in the Suburban Council participating? The majority of schools are participating in the moderate risk sports. Not all of them though. There's a few that are still working through if they're going to participate or not. And all the schools are participating in those lower risk sports of cross country, tennis, and golf. Yeah, so how will the students get approval from the district? So everything that you would need to fill out is going to be provided to you by a Google form. You know, and my hope is after this meeting and this week, once we get the names of all the student athletes that are participating, when you fill out that health history update form, then we will be able to take all of those email addresses and provide you with information in the Google forms that you would need to fill out. That way we don't have to keep sending out emails to everyone in every grade level for students that maybe aren't participating in the fall season. Once we get the distribution list of all the athletes that are participating in the fall, we will be able to send specific information on the fall season. But yes, we will have a Google form for parents that are interested in driving and becoming improved drivers. We'll have information for student athletes that are going to be able to drive, and you know, for parents to sign off on those as well. Yeah, we understand that the transportation is definitely going to be a concern. That's why we've provided other opportunities for athletes to drive other athletes, for parents to drive other athletes. Transportation, I know, has been difficult this year in school as well. We have a higher percentage of parents driving students to school. Again, we wanted to ensure we stayed in alignment with our district reopening plan on the guidelines for transportation. So that's one reason why we have made the decision of the transportation just being provided by the students and the parents. All right, so how do students store their sports equipment if they are in person at school? Do they have to carry it around all day? No, they do not have to carry it around. We have a couple team rooms that they can store that equipment. You know, for the most part, I would say in the fall, you have golf clubs, the tennis rackets, and field hockey sticks that would need to be stored. You know, in regards to soccer, with their shoes and their shin guards, they can probably store those in their backpacks. But we will not have access to any locker rooms, and I'll get to that in a minute. But students don't have access to any lockers, so they would have to hold on to that that equipment that they can in their bags. For field hockey sticks, tennis rackets, or golf clubs, we would be able to store them. They can get in contact with their coach and come up with a spot, or we can also store them across from our athletic office in the team rooms that are located down by the gym. All right, I'm going to keep going here. The next topic that has been talked about a lot in our league, and you know, I had some discussion last night at our Board of Education meeting, is in regards to the athletic placement process. This process is a program that the state has put together that allows 7th and 8th graders to participate in athletics at the high school level. You have to get approved by our school doctor, you have to have parent permission, and then you also have to go through a physical fitness test. So any current 8th grader, so any 8th grader that participated on a high school level team last fall, so any 8th grader that went through the athletic placement process in the fall, they're grandfathered and they can begin practicing on September 21st. You know, we are focused on mitigating exposure between the middle school and high school student athletes to the best of our ability. And we want to start with a small sample of student athletes, which I believe it's like 6 or 7 that participated last year as a 7th grader. And those individuals would be able to participate on the 21st. I have been working with coaches over the past few days. We had a coaches meeting where we discussed many of these same topics that we're discussing tonight. And we also talked about the athletic placement process. And I've been working with them to develop some additional names The athletic placement process is not for every student athlete. It's really for the exceptional few who will get good playing time at the high school level. So as we progress into this first week of the season, we'll be working with the coaches to finalize a list of any student athletes that we may look at to bring up. And again, I think overall the goal is, we want our student athletes to be safe. So we want our program to get off the ground. We want the season to start off successful, and then we will entertain the opportunity to add additional team members into each program. And that would only, happen for about no more than a 2-week period. If we get after 2 weeks, we wouldn't add any additional athletes to the list. Our plan is to hopefully have that completed within the first week of the season, so any new members would be joining the team after the first week. So cleaning and disinfecting, a lot of the same protocols that we have in place within the school. All teams will be provided with hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies. We do encourage all student athletes to have a little hand sanitizer attached to their bags so that they can utilize that throughout practice, when they have breaks. All shared equipment will be cleaned after practice and competitions. All benches will be cleared before each competition, both home and away teams. And bleachers will be accessible, but we strongly recommend for parents and spectators to bring their own chairs as much as you possibly can. One point I wanted to, just to take a step back when I was discussing masks. Again, masks are going to be, it's going to be different, as we all know, and maybe some athletes that have been participating over the summer have been wearing masks for their sports. So it's going to be a challenge, for sure. And, the coaches and I spoke a lot about this yesterday, and, we're going to be providing multiple mask breaks for our student athletes. Ultimately, we want our student athletes to be communicating with us if they need to take off their mask, and coaches are going to be cognizant of the fact of when they're doing different drills and conditioning drills to provide many mask breaks for student athletes. Okay, so athletic contests. All the athletic schedules should be posted on Schedule Galaxy by the end of the week. Right now, you may see some games in there, but they're not full schedules. Each school in the Suburban Council needs to accept the games before they become live to the public. So there may be some games missing, so don't print off a schedule today. I would wait till next week before you print off those schedules for your child. All right, so all contests on our Centennial Field, like we did last year, were streamed on the NFHS camera. The goal for us is to put as many contests as we can on our turf field, so that parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, family, friends are able to watch their child participate. So we've adjusted the schedules as much as we can to accommodate for varsity and JV level field hockey and boys and girls soccer to compete as much as we can on Centennial Field. Each student athlete this fall season is going to be provided with 2 spectator badges. So similar to a lanyard with a badge on it, this is similar to what parents or student athletes will be given from their coach. On that badge, it's going to say Suburban Council Athletics. On the back, it's going to have some guidelines to ensure safety at our athletic contest. And also on those badges, it's going to indicate what sport it's for and what level it's for. So, for example, if your child participates in boys varsity soccer, when they come home and they have the 2 passes, on the front it'll say varsity soccer, so that will allow you attendance into the varsity soccer games. It will not allow you attendance into the field hockey games, the JV soccer, or the any other sports that are going on during the fall season. Those passes can be transferred between family members. So if one game a mother and a father go, next game grandparents go, however you decide to do that, but you do only have a maximum of 2 spectators. I would love to have additional spectators. I understand people have have large families, they have multiple children, and they want all their family members to be able to attend the game. We are following the guidance that has been put out by the state and also the State Athletic Association, also from the Department of Health, guidance that they put out for athletics during the summer. And it says max of 2 spectators. Again, our ultimate goal is the safety of our student athletes, our coaches, the officials, and we want to ensure that we are able to compete for this entire fall season. And one way that we can mitigate that is decreasing the number of spectators that are in attendance at our competitions. But again, I think we have a great system outside. The NFHS camera allows us to stream those games and for you to have the opportunity to watch games if you're not able to attend. Now, for the sport of swimming, the league has made a decision that we will not be allowing spectators for swimming. I talked to Coach Turner, and he's going to work with the parents to ensure that we do have timers, and those timers would be the only spectators that would be allowed. When we do our senior night, we're going to make sure that the senior parents are the ones that are timers for that event. One of the reasons why we're not allowing spectators for swimming is, one, it's an indoor event, and we have more restrictions on our numbers of individuals that can be in the facility. Number two, in our swimming pool and in many swimming pools in our league, it's not an extremely big area. Our visiting team utilizes the bleachers where the parents are sitting, so it makes it difficult to be able to accommodate the spectators and for our visiting team to be safe during that competition. So unfortunately, we will not be providing spectator passes for the sport of swimming. And our goal with those 3 swimming meets that we have at home, our goal is to stream them on YouTube just like we're doing here tonight, so that you would have the opportunity to watch the swim meets. All right. So locker rooms, I mentioned a little bit ago with locker rooms. We are not able to use locker rooms during the school day, so we're not going to be able to use them after the school day for athletics. They'll be closed throughout the season. Again, we can store some equipment in the team room, and that would be with myself or one of the coaches opening the door for student athletes to put the equipment in and to take it back out. All student athletes in school on a given day who have practice after school can change in a school bathroom. We will have, of course, we're going to have students arriving for practice that are virtual. We're going to have student athletes that are arriving for practice that are in a hybrid model, that are home for the day, and we're going to have students that are here in school. We should have only less than a third of the student athletes on a given day will be here in school, so it won't be like a traditional school day where we have a ton of kids here. So those individuals that are practicing right after school, because many athletes may be practicing a little later on the turf field, so again, that percentage of athletes is smaller, so it shouldn't be difficult to be able to get into a bathroom. I don't think they'll be overcrowded for student athletes to change before they go out for practice. So any student athlete that does come from home that are in the hybrid model, or if a student athlete goes home and they have practice, let's say at 4 or 5, and they come back, or any student athlete that is in the virtual model, they're not going to have access to the building other than our swimmers. They'll need to report directly to their field. If they need to store equipment, as I mentioned, we can make arrangements on the days that kids are here in school. Obviously, if they know they're not going to be in school the next day because they're in a hybrid model or they're virtual, then they would just bring their equipment home. And we may adjust some of the equipment storage. Some teams that are practicing predominantly out by the turf field, we may even have our coaches have the student athletes store equipment off of our concession stand. So that's still an option as well. Again, just kind of going along the lines with the locker room, we really encourage student athletes as best as you can, and we know it's not always going to work, to go home before practice and games, not having access to the lockers or the locker rooms. The bathrooms on Centennial Field will be open and accessible for students, the student athletes, coaches, spectators, and officials. We will not have any porta potties out on the field, but you can access those bathrooms from the outside. So those will be open, when practices start up. If we do have any weather delays or weather concerns, student athletes will be allowed back in the building, and that would just be our student athletes during practices and our student athletes during competitions. If we are in a competition, the opposing team would be going back to their bus or going back to their vehicle during that weather delay until we're able to get back into playing. And no building access would be granted for spectators. as I mentioned, things may change, so we'll continue to provide any updates and guidance as things potentially change as we move into next week and as we move forward. If we have any positive COVID-19 cases, we will follow all the guidelines that are outlined in our school reopening plan, along with abiding by all the state and local health guidelines. So we will ensure that we follow all those guidelines. Again, I stated at the beginning, we started participating, or we had to shut things down at the beginning of March when we were about a week into our spring season, and it's been a difficult 6 months for many people, not just regarding athletics, but in life in general. And to be able to see our students back in school over the past few days has been great. I know it's not the same setting that they're used to, but to get them back here has just been awesome to see. And to be able to get back into our sports is going to be incredible as well. We're really looking forward to seeing our athletes competing again, practicing, the enjoyment that they have in participating. We know how valuable and how important it is for many of our athletes to be a part of our programs and to be competing. So we're excited, we're thrilled that Dr. McGrath and the entire Board of Education are supporting the athletic department and the Suburban Council, providing a positive athletic experience for our student athletes. All right, so I'm going to continue on and look at the questions that are here and see. That's a great question. Will approved drivers need to be temperature checked prior to driving another student athlete in their vehicle? That's something we haven't thought of, but I think that, as you bring up that question, I think that's something we would be doing. So we'll make sure, if it's another student athlete on that team, then obviously they would be going through the protocol. But if we do have, another parent that's in charge, that could be something that we would look to do. So more information will come on that. How do students store their equipment? I think I went over that. Yeah, I understand people have expressed that middle school students and high school students are sharing a bus, and that's that's accurate. And I think what I mentioned at the beginning and throughout is we wanted to try to provide the safest atmosphere as possible. So yes, there's no guarantee that we could ensure that no one's going to be exposed to anything, but we can do what we can to help limit that exposure. And I think that's the point we're trying to make here with between the middle school athletes and the high school athletes. We want to try to limit the exposure as much as we can across the two buildings. We know that's impossible to 100% limit that exposure. We have multiple siblings in high school and middle school. We have, again, middle school and high school students on a bus, but I think we have protocols in place, and we know all those student athletes that are within those buses and those siblings. Once we start crossing together all the student athletes between the high school and middle school for athletics, again, it just creates some more challenges. So we're just trying to limit it as much as we can. There's no guarantee, but we're going to limit it as best as we can. Yeah, I understand with the modified, and this wasn't an easy decision by no means. We definitely struggled with the decision on, as a league of not providing modified or freshman schedules. I think with the modified level, I've had an opportunity to talk with multiple of our youth organizations. For example, with youth soccer and youth volleyball, I know there's going to be some opportunities for those 7th and 8th graders. I know that our field hockey program is running a youth camp for 7th and 8th graders. I'm hoping to see more of those 7th and 8th graders that aren't able to participate, to be able to go into those youth programs for the fall and still be able to participate. It's not a great situation. It's not something that we're thrilled about, that we're excited that we're not offering the modified programs for the fall season. And we're hoping that it's just a fall season and we can pick things up in the winter season and move forward with a full modified slate and a full varsity JV and freshman slate. Everyone, unfortunately, counts as a spectator. Obviously, a minor that's under the age of 2 does not need to wear a mask. They could be one of the 2 spectators, but we can only allow 2 spectators in for each contest. Tennis players, you know, in doubles, they would need to wear a mask because they're going to be in close proximity to their teammate. In singles, they could participate without wearing masks, similar to golf. They're a distance away from their opponent, so they would be able to participate without wearing masks. Will the students provide masks? Or will the school provide masks for the students? That's something we can do. I know the district has masks that they have been provided for students as they come into school. If they don't have them, we definitely can do the same for athletics. Great question in regards to our athletic trainer. If a student athlete needs to be taped or there's an injury, if they're out on the field, I've talked to the coaches about contacting our athletic trainer. Our athletic trainer can go out to the field and most likely tape a student athlete's ankle there. If they need to, they can bring them into the building and do an assessment into the building in their office. After school, our athletic trainer will be here. His office is located across the hall from the athletic office, and he will see student athletes that maybe have had an injury, they need to be taped, whatever the reason may be, but we're only allowing 1 student athlete at a time in his office. We don't want students lingering outside the office, and students are not going to be able to be in his office unless they're there, to get taped or to be looked at for an injury. So our athletic trainer will be here, he will be outside, and he'll be accessible for our student athletes. Okay, so in regards to screening for our athletic contests, for everything but tennis, everyone will need to enter the facility by Walter Reed Gate, and at that spot there will be a chaperone that will be at a table there to screen and check in spectators and the officials. So you would walk up to the chaperone, you would show them your badge, and then we will have a screening form for you to fill out to get entrance into the facility. You will fill out the form, and then you will be allowed into the facility. At this time, we're not going to be doing temperature checks for spectators as they come in. So you will not be going into the high school for any screening. That will be done right as you go towards the field for your contest. As I mentioned, varsity parents aren't going to be able to stay and watch the JV game and vice versa. We will have games mostly in the evening when they're on Centennial Field. I would encourage you not to arrive too early for your child's game, and then you can, so you don't have to wait to get into the facility. But once our chaperone checks you in, you'll be able to go and watch the game, and then after the game you would leave for the next parents to come in if there's a game following you. For tennis parents, you would enter the facility down by the gym entrance, which is right where the tennis courts are, and then you can watch right there, and you would go through a similar screening process. We will not, as I mentioned, we will not have parents for soccer, for field hockey that are going to watch games on Centennial Field, or if they have a game on the grass field, which we don't have a ton, but if they do, all parents still have to park in the main parking lot of the school, and they would need to walk in by the Walter Reed Gate. And chaperones by the tennis courts, if you walk up and you have a badge for soccer, they're going to direct you to the other gate. Some practices will be later in the evening. As I mentioned, we're going to utilize our turf a lot like we normally do in the fall. Not every practice will be later. Some coaches will have practices after school. I'm still working with Mr. Brunson on a plan for the student athletes that are here after school that need to wait before a practice starts. In the past, we've had the opportunity to have a sports study hall. Mr. Brunson and I still need to work through exactly how we will manage the student athletes that are going to have to stay here before practice starts. But again, it's best if it's possible to go home. It does make things easier, and it provides that student athlete with an opportunity to get home, drop their stuff off. They have nowhere to store it here, and then just get their stuff ready for practice. If not, we will make things work, and we will come up with a plan. It says freshmen that are trying out for JV soccer will be allowed to play. We've always had freshmen participating in JV soccer. We don't have a freshman level program for soccer, so our freshmen and sophomore usually were the members that made up the JV team, with some juniors and potentially some middle school students. But yes, freshmen will have an opportunity to try out for the JV soccer programs. I know it's been tough all summer long. I fielded a number of questions in regards to the community having access to our fields, to be able to walk, to exercise, to use our tennis courts, and that question continues to come up. And we had discussions this week about it. I believe in the next few days you will see something in regards to our fields. I think once we open up our facility for our athletic programs, we're not able to, lock down all of our tennis courts and our turf field for the community. And the reason why we did that, and the reason why we had to do that, was to ensure that we were following all the guidelines that were in place. And with the guidance that was out there and the decision that was made throughout many schools within our council and around the area, we have the ability to lock up parts of our campus. Schools that had that ability did the same. And I think schools that didn't have that ability to lock things up just because their fields were wide open, unfortunately, they, from talking to colleagues, they had, security that would, check out on people and instruct that they would leave their campus. But our plan right now is to come out with something soon on the ability for the community to start utilizing our track and our tennis courts. Okay, booster clubs, great question. I went over the booster clubs with parents. Unfortunately, we are not going to be providing any concessions for our seasons. So any games that are out on the turf field or on the soccer fields or wherever, we're not going to be providing concessions. We traditionally have had pasta parties for our kids, and I know it's been great. I've enjoyed walking in the cafeteria for a pasta party. And it's something I know that it's a great way to build team camaraderie, and it's something that we unfortunately are not going to be able to do this year. So no pasta parties on campus or at home. We would encourage any fundraising that goes on through the Booster Club to be done electronic. Any of like the apparel orders all be done over the computer. Again, things will be a little different when it comes to the booster clubs and concession stands. Will students be able to attend the games? Again, it's tough. As much as we would love to have our students being at our games and cheering on our teams, unfortunately, to ensure that we follow the guidelines that are in place by the State Health Department, the guidelines that are in place with the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, we are not going to be allowed to have any more than 2 spectators per athlete at a contest. I know it's unfortunate. I know the students enjoy going to the games. I enjoy seeing them there. I know that their classmates enjoy having them there. But our number one goal, our number one priority is to ensure the safety of the student athletes in the game, and we want to ensure that we can get through our entire fall season. So again, I talked a little bit earlier about limiting the exposure, and that's another reason why we're trying to limit the amount of people that are at the contest to ensure the safety of the student athletes. Will the workout room be open? Again, I mentioned that earlier. I think we are going to get going with our fall season, and then we're going to develop a plan for how we can reopen the workout room and put protocols in place to ensure the weight room is a safe place for student athletes. Well, chaperones, yes, the chaperones will be school employees that would be conducting screening. So if you have two students, two children playing, let's say you have a student athlete that is on the JV soccer team and also on the varsity soccer team, you have one student that's a senior and one that's a freshman, yes, you can go back and forth and watch both games. You would have a pass for both of them. You can show both passes when you enter that you're going to be going back and forth for both games. That's a great question. Okay. Look at that, we're right at 7 o'clock. I know we started a few minutes late, but I kept true to the 7 o'clock end time. I appreciate everyone's time tonight and your questions. If you have additional questions that you have after tonight, after you receive any information that I send to you, please feel free to send me an email. You can reach out and ask any question off of tonight that you need more clarification on as well. I'd be happy to answer those questions. I went through a similar presentation with our coaches, and I'm really confident we have a solid plan in place to ensure a productive fall season. And again, it's a heavy lift. I know it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift for our teachers, our coaches, our students, our parents, for everyone involved to come into school each day and to participate in athletics. It's going to be different. We know that. But I think ultimately we owe it to our student athletes to provide them the best experience we can. And I think our school district has done a fantastic job to get our school off the ground and running and providing that experience for our students. And we're going to do the same for our athletes. We owe it to them. We need to see them back on campus. We need to see our athletes running out on the fields in our Spartan gear. We take a lot of pride in being a Spartan, and we're looking forward to seeing our athletes succeed as we've done in the past and enjoying a sport that they love to play. So thank you all again tonight for being here. This isn't a normal situation to be presented to a camera. I'd like to do this in person, but again, times have changed, and we adapt and we pivot, and we look at ways that we can move forward and again still provide that quality experience. So thank you all. I appreciate the time tonight, and again, follow up with any questions that you may have. Thank you.